Welcome to Suhavi Audiobooks YouTube channel. Today, you are going to listen to the summary of the chapter Indira Gandhi's Assassination and its Aftermath from the book The Sikhs by Khushwant Singh.
For a slip made in a few seconds, the price may have to be paid over many centuries, runs an Indian proverb. For an incident that took place in a few split seconds, on the morning of 31st October 1984, the course of Indian history took a decisive and tragic turn. October in India is normally a month of festivals. The monsoon has withdrawn, the crops are nearing harvest, and people briefly rest from their labor. Diwali, the festival of lamps, usually fills homes with light and celebration. But in October 1984, the mood was somber. A year of tension between Hindus and Sikhs, centered on Punjab, and the storming of the Golden Temple had cast a long shadow. Many Sikhs wore black turbans in mourning. Diwali lamps were absent from Sikh homes. Anger was directed at Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and President Zail Singh, believed to have sanctioned the army action. Security around both had been tightened. Mrs. Gandhi's residence was protected by multiple rings of security, hundreds of guards, and sophisticated electronic measures. She had been advised to wear a bulletproof jacket, yet on that morning, she chose not to. Always particular about her appearance, she selected a colorful sari. A BBC film crew, headed by Peter Ustinov, was waiting to record her interview. As she stepped into the garden and passed through a hedge, two members of her own security detail, both Sikhs, opened fire at close range. All India Radio announced only that an attempt had been made on her life and that she was seriously injured, then returned to routine programming. Foreign broadcasts soon confirmed what official channels delayed. Indira Gandhi was dead. The hesitation followed an old practice. Public confirmation of a ruler's death often waited until succession was secure. Crowds gathered at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, chanting slogans in her praise. There were no Sikhs among them. Reports also emerged of celebrations in some quarters. Once her death was confirmed, anger turned swiftly into collective blame. The slogan changed to calls for vengeance. From the hospital area, mobs spread into roads, markets, and neighborhoods. Sikh shops were looted and burned. Sikh men were beaten unconscious. Vehicles were stopped. Sikh passengers were dragged out and assaulted. Cars driven by Sikhs were set on fire after petrol was siphoned and sprinkled inside. Since many taxis and buses in Delhi were owned by Sikhs, the city soon witnessed hundreds of burning vehicles. Even the president's convoy was attacked. His Sikh press officer barely escaped alive. Khushwant Singh records that what followed was not spontaneous rage, but organized violence. On the night of 31st October, local leaders of the ruling Congress party allegedly met to plan reprisals. Party workers were mobilized. Criminal elements from slums and nearby villages were contacted. Sikh homes and shops were marked. Trucks were arranged. Iron rods, kerosene, and petrol were collected. Rumors were spread of massacres and poisoned water to inflame fear and justify violence. At dawn on the 1st of November, the pogrom began in earnest. Truckloads of hoodlums moved through the city, attacking gurudwaras and Sikh property. Holy scriptures were dragged out and burnt. Priests were beaten. Looting accompanied arson. The violence returned in waves, followed by eerie stillness, then returned again, targeting garages, godowns, markets, and homes. For Sikhs, humiliation accompanied murder. Thousands had their hair and beards forcibly cut. Young men were doused with petrol and set alight. A particularly cruel method involved placing petrol-soaked tires around victims' necks and igniting them. In outlying areas, gangs descended from nearby villages, killed men, looted what they could, and set the rest on fire. There were reports of gang rapes and abductions, buses and trains were stopped. Sikh passengers were dragged out and burnt alive, among them even army officers in uniform. There was little resistance. In Delhi, Sikhs formed a small minority, living dispersed among Hindus without separate enclaves and with little sense of insecurity. Hindus who tried to protect Sikh neighbors were threatened, yet many still did, saving lives at great personal risk. The chapter notes that many in the mobs were poor sweepers, cobblers, laborers, beggars, young men from slums and villages, displaced by the city's expansion. Loot was a central motive. Radios, televisions, bicycles, clothes, utensils, furniture. Killing became grotesquely mixed with envy and thrill. Yet the larger pattern, the author insists, was directed. Mobs were often led by congressmen, including elected representatives. Police looked away and in some cases took their share of the spoils. Sikh property was marked for destruction in a manner chillingly reminiscent of historical persecutions elsewhere. For nearly 3 days, law and order collapsed not only in Delhi, but in other cities as well. The new Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi, his ministers and senior officials were consumed by funeral arrangements and the reception of foreign leaders. State television showed little beyond ceremonial mourning. Curfews and shoot-at-sight orders were announced, but rarely enforced. The army was called in only after massive loss of life and property. Fear spread across the city. Thousands of Sikhs fled their homes, seeking refuge in camps, hotels, or with Hindu friends. The worst fear was that violence would peak on the day of the funeral, when large crowds might again turn on the vulnerable. Rajiv Gandhi eventually saw the devastation himself, yet his public words did not reassure Sikhs. He spoke of vengeance, then added, "But not in this way." He offered a metaphor that many found chilling. When a big tree falls, the earth shakes, suggesting mass violence as an understandable aftershock. Nobody knows the true number of victims. Official figures shifted from about 1,000 to over 2,000. Independent estimates placed the death toll above 6,000 across India, more than half in Delhi. Tens of thousands were forced into relief camps, including many newly widowed women. Independent civil liberties reports later concluded that the violence was planned and orchestrated, naming senior Congress leaders and documenting police and administrative complicity. Khushwant Singh is unsparing in judgment. He calls the killings a genocide, not a riot. He warns that when mobs taste blood and are not punished, a dangerous precedent is set, one that threatens every community in the future. In Parliament, the author appeals for a high-powered judicial inquiry, arguing that without justice, there can be no peace in Punjab or India. At the same time, he pays tribute to Indira Gandhi as a leader of immense courage and historic stature, while stating firmly that Operation Blue Star was an error of judgment whose consequences were catastrophic. He insists that nothing would have pained Mrs. Gandhi more than the collective punishment of an entire community for the crime of a few. Speaking as a Sikh, a critic, and an Indian, he urges reconciliation, rehabilitation, and the restoration of the rule of law. The chapter closes with Rajiv Gandhi's rise to power and a sympathy-driven electoral landslide. Hope is mixed with deep concern. Khushwant Singh ends with a warning and a plea. India must choose justice over revenge, or risk repeating the tragedy again.